My name is Robert Hayes, and I'm 41 years old. For 2 decades I've poured concrete for other men's dreams, watching office towers and shopping malls rise while my own body carried the scars of the work. Calloused hands, an aching back, joints that stiffened in the cold. Still, I used to tell myself there was dignity in it. At least when I was gone, something solid would remain standing because of me. A sidewalk. A foundation. Something that couldn't just vanish overnight. I used to believe that counted for something. Especially when I came home exhausted, dust clinging to my hair, to a woman who once looked at me like I'd hung the moon. I met Angela when I was 21, and she was 20. Safeway on Meridian Street. She was working the express checkout, wearing that red vest and a smile that could have stopped traffic. I must have looked like hell, dirty boots, shirt stuck to me from a 12-hour shift, sweat and grit everywhere. I just wanted a 6-pack in my bed. But she rang me up, scribbled her number on the back of the receipt, and pushed it toward me with this playful laugh. Call me. I get off at 9. I don't think my heart had ever pounded so hard. Those early years felt like something out of a song. We'd sit out on the fire escape of her tiny studio apartment, drinking cheap Moscato straight from the bottle, legs dangling, talking about the life we were going to build. She wanted to be somebody, not famous, just someone who mattered, someone who had nice clothes, vacations, a house that didn't smell like other people's cooking through the vents. I promised her I'd build that life brick by brick, even if it killed me. And when she kissed me, sweet and fiery, I believed we could do anything together. We married at the courthouse 2 years later. A Thursday afternoon, no big ceremony, just us and a few family members. She wore a white sundress she'd saved for, and I squeezed into my father's old suit, a size too small across the shoulders. Our honeymoon was a cheap motel near the coast. I can still see her sitting cross-legged on the bed, cartons of Chinese food around us, curtains fluttering with the ocean breeze. She'd said it was perfect. She'd said I was perfect. We bought our first house not long after. A fixer-upper in a rough neighborhood, but it was ours. Gunshots at night, sirens echoing, but we didn't care. Every weekend for 2 years I tore that place apart and rebuilt it with my own 2 hands. New drywall, new floors, plumbing that actually worked. Angela would bring me sandwiches, sit on a paint bucket, and talk about her day at the office. Back then, she sounded proud of me. Back then, I thought the sweat and blood I poured into that house was proof of love. But somewhere around year 10, I started noticing her eyes shifting. She wasn't just looking anymore, she was comparing. Linda from book club had a Lexus. Her sister's husband flew her to Cabo twice a year. The wives at her company's functions wore heels that cost more than a week of my pay. Angela would smile politely at me, then go home and drop little grenades at dinner. I'm not complaining, she'd say, which meant she absolutely was. I just think we could be doing better. It wasn't about better anymore. It was about more. More money, more clothes, more proof to everyone else that she'd married well. Then came Greg Thompson. My boss, technically. He ran the construction company from air-conditioned offices while men like me broke our backs in the sun. We met him at a 4th of July barbecue 5 years ago. I remember Angela shaking his hand a little too long, her laugh a little too bright. That night, she leaned close to me in the car and whispered, "Greg's the kind of man who doesn't settle. You could learn something from him." I brushed it off, told myself she was just caught up in his big talk, his expensive watch, his stories about Europe and business trips. But deep down, I felt the shift. The woman who once cheered me on while I hammered nails into a rotting floorboard was starting to look at me like I was the floorboard, old, reliable, but beneath her ambitions. Greg Thompson was the kind of man who knew how to fill a room. Tall, broad-shouldered, silver at the temples, he wore a suit like it was stitched onto him, and somehow looked just as confident in jeans and a polo. He could sip bourbon with the boys, then turn around and quote stock prices or wine vintages to impress a crowd. Angela's eyes tracked him around that 4th of July party like he was magnetic. She didn't even try to hide it. On the drive home, she leaned back in the passenger seat, lips curled like she was still savoring the night. "Now that's a successful man," she said, peeling off her dress with her back to me when we got home. Then, casually, as if it were an afterthought, "Did you see his watch? That was a Rolex, Robert. A real one." I muttered that I didn't need a Rolex to know what time it was. She laughed, but not the soft laugh from our Safeway days. This one had edges, sharp, cutting, like she was laughing at me, not with me. After that barbecue, the changes weren't sudden, they crept in like water seeping through cracks. Angela started hitting the gym religiously, always in brand new workout gear. Fancy creams and serums started showing up on the bathroom counter, each bottle costing more than I made in a day pouring concrete. Her hair appointments went from supercuts to high-end salons with names that sounded like perfume brands. When I brought up the ballooning credit card bills, she waved me off with that dismissive hand flick that made me feel smaller than a kid being scolded. "I'm investing in myself, Robert. Maybe you should try it sometime." I'd stand in the bathroom afterward, staring into the mirror. The crow's feet at the corners of my eyes were deeper, gray spread through my beard, and my shoulders sagged from carrying the weight of 20 years of labor. I looked tired. But I also saw the man who had never once forgotten our anniversary, who knew her favorite flowers were yellow roses, who had built her a house with his bare hands. That reflection was still me, but to her, it wasn't enough anymore. Then came the phone. That night in bed, she rolled away from me, her phone buzzing on the nightstand. She grabbed it immediately, screen lighting up her face. And for the first time in 2 decades, I watched her smile in a way that had nothing to do with me. It wasn't just a smile, it was a secret, glowing smile meant for someone else. From there, everything accelerated. Angela started working late. Or at least, that's what she called it. "Budget reviews," she'd say, dropping her heels at 10:30 at night. "You know how Greg is about quarterly reports." Oh, I knew how Greg was. Smooth as aged whiskey, with a laugh that always made you feel like you were being let in on some inside joke. He'd stop by job sites every now and then, clapping me on the back with manicured hands, asking about the missus, with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. Angela's criticisms at home got sharper, meaner, like she'd been saving them up all day just to unload on me. At dinner she'd sigh dramatically. "Do you have to chew so loud? Greg says table manners are the mark of breeding." Or in the morning, watching me pull on my jeans and work boots. "Those jeans make you look homeless. Why can't you dress like a real professional?" I'd shake my head. "I work construction. You want me pouring foundations in a 3-piece suit? I want you to have some ambition," she snapped. Some men actually try to improve themselves instead of staying stuck in the same dead-end job for 20 years. The irony? I'd been promoted twice in 3 years. From cruise supervisor to site manager. It was good money, good benefits. But it wasn't Greg money. It wasn't Rolex money. Soon she started missing the things that mattered. My nephew's wedding. My mother's birthday dinner. Even our own anniversary. When I reminded her, she just blinked like she'd forgotten entirely. "Oh, was that today?" she muttered, already scrolling on her phone. 20 years together, and it meant nothing to her anymore. But she never missed a company function. Never skipped a team-building retreat or a girls' night that had her stumbling in at 2 a.m. smelling like cologne that sure as hell wasn't mine. One night, desperate, I suggested a weekend getaway. Just the two of us. A little bed and breakfast on the coast, a chance to remember why we'd fallen in love. She actually laughed, dismissively, almost pitying me. "I can't just drop everything because you're feeling needy, Robert," she said coldly. "Some of us have careers to think about." The loneliest part wasn't just lying next to someone who'd become a stranger. It was when she forgot to be cruel, when the old Angela peeked through for just a moment. Laughing at something stupid on TV, humming while she stirred sauce, reaching for my hand in her sleep. Those glimpses of the woman I married cut deeper than the insults. Because they reminded me that she was still in there somewhere, buried under ambition, bitterness, and whatever spell Greg Thompson had woven around her. Once I started noticing the little things, it was like pulling a loose thread and watching the whole sweater unravel. Expensive lingerie showed up in her drawer, tags already ripped off but clearly from stores way out of our price range. She'd slip into the bathroom with her phone, run the shower so I couldn't hear, and talk in hushed tones. The credit card bills told their own story. Charges at restaurants I'd never set foot in, always 2 entrees, always a bottle of wine. One night, after another long shift, I laid the Visa bill on the counter and asked, "Who'd you have lunch with at Chez Laurent?" She didn't even look up from her phone. "Work thing. Greg needed to go over my performance review." I stared at the numbers. $60 for lunch seems steep for a performance review. That's when she lifted her eyes to mine, and I swear I felt frost cut through me. Her expression wasn't defensive, it was calculating, weighing me like I was something she'd outgrown. "Maybe if you understood how real business works, you'd know that's normal," she said with disdain. Then, twisting the knife, "But you wouldn't. You're content being exactly what you've always been. Mediocre." That word hit harder than a sledgehammer. Mediocre. 20 years of building a life for us, every birthday, every mortgage payment, every damn sacrifice, and she reduced it all to that one word. After that, I couldn't stop myself from checking up on her. When she said she had late meetings, I'd drive past her office. Her car was always there, conveniently parked beside Greg's BMW. The building would be dark except for a single glowing window on the executive floor. I'd sit in my truck, hands clenched on the wheel, imagination gnawing at me. I told myself I was being paranoid, turning into one of those pathetic husbands who couldn't trust their wives. But deep down I knew. The breaking point came when she told me she had a special project with Greg. Something about restructuring the Detroit accounts. I tried to be thoughtful, offered to bring her dinner, Chinese from that hole in the wall she used to love back when money was tight. I even thought it might spark some old memory between us. Her reaction? Volcanic. "Don't you dare show up at my office!" she screamed, actually standing with her fists clenched like she was ready to hit me. Her voice wasn't a wife protecting her professional reputation. It was the voice of someone hiding secrets she'd guard with violence if she had to. For the first time in 20 years, I stopped believing her. The Carlson job wrapped up early one Friday. The guys wanted to grab beers, celebrate finishing ahead of schedule, but I waved them off. I thought, maybe tonight I'll remind Angela who we are. Maybe I'll remind her that love built this marriage, not credit scores and Rolexes. I stopped at the florist, picked up yellow roses, her favorite. $30 for a dozen now, but I didn't care. I swung by Marcello's, grabbed her favorite chicken marsala, extra mushrooms, the same way she'd ordered it on our 5th anniversary. When I pulled up to the house, it was too quiet. Her car sat in the driveway. Across the street, tucked in the shadows like he thought he was clever, was Greg's BMW. My hands shook as I carried the roses and the takeout bags inside. The smell of garlic and rosemary filled the hallway as I climbed the stairs. Then I heard it, the sound that shattered whatever was left of me. Laughter. Angela's laughter, bright, free, genuine. The kind of laugh she hadn't given me in years. Greg's deeper chuckle followed, smug, satisfied. And then, the bed springs. My bed. The bed I had built with my own hands, in the room I painted her favorite shade of blue. Each creak was a hammer to the chest. I should have walked out. Should have turned around and spared myself. But no. I needed to know. Needed to hear it straight from their mouths. Step by step, I crept closer. The bedroom door was ajar, light spilling out like it was mocking me. Their voices were clearer now. Angela's was breathless but deliberate, her words cutting me to ribbons. "God, you don't know what it's like living with him. He's nothing but a neuter dog, loyal, boring, too weak to ever fight back. He still thinks love is enough, like we're 20 and broke. He'll keep working himself to death while I finally get what I deserve." Greg's reply twisted the knife. "The devotion's almost admirable. The way he looks at you at company events, like you're still his precious angel. Meanwhile, I've been screwing his wife in his own bed for 8 months, and he's too stupid to notice. They laughed together, a sound so cruel it didn't even seem human. And they didn't stop there. They went on, mocking me like I was nothing but a joke for them to share. My dad bod. My lack of ambition. My pathetic small-town mindset. Each word was a bullet, and I stood there in the hall, roses trembling in my hands, listening to the life I'd built be torn apart piece by piece. The worst part wasn't just what they said, it was that they were right about one thing. I had been too trusting, too willing to believe excuses that didn't add up. The way I still brought her flowers like it was 1,950, as if yellow roses could keep a woman faithful. The way I swallowed every lie because I trusted the girl I met in Safeway 20 years ago, not the stranger in my bed now. And then I heard Angela giggle. A sound that once meant love now dripped with cruelty. "Remember when he suggested that weekend getaway?" she asked between gasps of breath. "Like I'd waste a weekend in some dusty cabin when I could be here with you." Greg's voice came low, smug. "The best part is he'll never do a damn thing about it, even if he knew. He's the type who'd forgive you. Probably blame himself for not being man enough to keep you satisfied." Their laughter came again, sharper this time, like nails dragging across my spine. I stood frozen in my own hallway, roses trembling in my fist, listening to 2 decades of marriage distilled into a cruel punchline. Every sacrifice, every birthday dinner I worked overtime to pay for, every late-night backache from jobs I never complained about, all of it had been rebranded as stupidity. Something to toast over champagne. Quietly, I pulled out my phone. My hands were steady now, almost too steady. I opened the camera app, hit record, and eased the door open another inch. There they were. Tangled in sheets I'd washed, Angela in the negligee I bought her last Valentine's Day, the same one she said made her feel beautiful. Greg's Rolex glinted under the lamp as he lifted a glass of wine. "To poor Robert," he said, chuckling. I filmed for 12 minutes. 12 minutes of their laughter, their insults, their contempt. Long enough for anyone to see exactly what kind of people they were. When I stepped back, I didn't storm in. I didn't scream. I didn't break down. I simply turned, walked downstairs, and set the roses on the counter. The takeout went into the fridge, because habits are hard to kill, even when your marriage already has been. Then I walked into the garage. The workshop smelled like oil and sawdust, the air heavy with the weight of 1,000 projects I'd built with my own 2 hands. This was my sanctuary, the one place Angela never bothered to enter. "Too dirty, too depressing," she always said. But it was mine. I sat on the workbench, surrounded by tools meant for building, fixing, creating, and for the first time, I considered how they might be used to tear something down. I forced myself to watch the video again. Every cruel word. Every laugh. Every ounce of contempt they poured over me while they drank my wine in my bed. This wasn't a mistake or a lapse in judgment. It was sport to them. A calculated humiliation. And in that moment, something inside me shifted permanently. The Robert who'd carried yellow roses up the stairs that night died at the threshold of that bedroom. He was gone. What sat in that garage was someone else, someone who'd learned that loyalty, patience, and mercy were weaknesses, tools for others to exploit. I waited 3 weeks. 3 long weeks of sleeping beside her while she texted him in the dark. 3 weeks of pretending to believe her lies about late meetings. 3 weeks to prepare, methodically, patiently. The old Robert would have confronted them right there, emotions blazing. But that man was gone. I was colder now, deliberate. I knew their pattern. Fridays were their nights. Had been for 8 months. Angela would claim a late meeting, Greg would tell his wife he was golfing, and they'd spend the evening in my house, my bed, laughing at me. This Friday would be different. I set up 3 hidden cameras in the bedroom, one in the smoke detector, one in the air vent, one behind the mirror. They'd never know. I pulled my Glock from the safe, cleaned it, loaded it. Not to use, not yet, but to remind myself, And then, eventually, that the neutered dog still had teeth. I downloaded everything: text threads, emails, credit card receipts. I backed it all up 3 different ways. A trail so perfect even Angela's sneers about real business wouldn't undo it. That Friday morning, I kissed her goodbye like nothing was wrong. She smiled absently, already texting him. I watched her drive away, then parked myself at the coffee shop 2 blocks from home, the Glock in the glove box, my phone buzzing with live feeds from the cameras I'd planted. I sipped burnt coffee, watching the clock. Each tick was a drumbeat in my chest, each minute another turn of the screw. I wasn't waiting to catch them anymore. I already had what I needed. No. Now I was waiting for the right moment to remind them that the neutered dog had finally learned how to bite. At 5:47 p.m. Greg's BMW nosed into my driveway like it had every right to be there. At 5:52, I watched through the live feed on my phone as they slipped into my bedroom, laughing, kissing, undressing with the casual comfort of people who thought they owned the place. By 6:15, they were deep into their routine, careless, confident, and completely convinced I was still the oblivious fool they'd mocked. That was when I came home. I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout. My steps were steady, each one deliberate. The Glock weighed heavy in the pocket of my jacket, not shaking, not slipping, just there, solid and real. The sounds from the upstairs bedroom were exactly what I expected. Breathless moans. Laughter. The kind of rhythmic movement that mocked the years I'd given to her. When I pushed the door open, the silence that followed was massive, like stepping into a cathedral. Angela's eyes went wide. Her mouth made that perfect O of shock, as if she hadn't spent 8 months ridiculing me in the same bed. Greg scrambled so fast he tumbled off the mattress, naked confidence evaporating in an instant. Both of them froze, pale and waiting, for me to break down, to scream, to pull the trigger. Instead, I pulled out my phone, walked to the dresser, and set it down where they could both see. I hit record. My voice was calm, so calm it scared even me. Go on. Keep laughing. Neither moved. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Angela clutched the sheet to her chest, trembling, as if modesty meant anything now. Robert, I can explain, she stammered, her voice shaking. I met her eyes and shook my head. No need. I already heard it all. 3 weeks ago, the neutered dog line? That one was clever. I reached into my jacket, pulled out the Glock, and tossed it onto the bed. I didn't point it. I didn't wave it around. I just let it sit there between us, heavy and undeniable, like a fact carved in stone. Greg's gaze locked on the gun, color draining from his face. Robert, let's be rational, he babbled, voice cracking. 2 strides and I had him by the throat. Years of hauling rebar, carrying cinder blocks, and lifting 100-pound bags of concrete gave me hands like steel vices. Greg's soft office muscles were no match. His feet kicked against the floor as I lifted him half an inch off it. The first punch shattered his nose. The second sent blood spraying across the hardwood I'd laid myself. By the 5th, teeth loosened and he collapsed to the floor, curling up, gasping, whimpering. Angela was screaming now, begging me to stop, her mascara streaking black rivers down her face. I stood over Greg, chest heaving, but my voice came out controlled, almost gentle. Everything's recorded. Every text. Every email. Every credit card charge. This room's been under surveillance for over an hour. Your careers, your reputations, your cozy little lives, they all belong to me now. Angela dropped to her knees, sobbing. Please, Robert. I'm sorry. It was a mistake. 8 months isn't a mistake, I replied coldly. 8 months is a choice. Just like every time you called me pathetic. Just like every time you said I was too boring to love. Those weren't mistakes either, were they? They were the truth. You just didn't think I'd ever hear it. I walked to the hallway, where a 5-gallon gas can sat waiting, tucked behind the linen closet door since that morning. Her eyes widened in terror as I carried it back in. The acrid smell filled the bedroom as I poured, soaking the sheets, the carpet, her wardrobe. The gasoline hissed against the blood already pooling at my feet. "You're insane," Greg managed through broken teeth. I struck a match. The flame danced in front of me, small but hungry. "No," I said evenly. "I'm finished." I gave them 30 seconds. 30 seconds to run, naked and scrambling, Angela clutching a sheet, Greg stumbling bloody and broken. They bolted past me, tripping over themselves, crashing into walls, shrieking in panic. Then I let the match fall. The bedroom ignited in a violent whoosh, the fire consuming 20 years of memories, photographs, promises, and lies. The heat rolled down the hallway as the flames clawed their way up the walls and across the ceiling. I walked downstairs calmly, as if I were leaving for work. The bouquet of yellow roses sat untouched on the counter. The takeout was still in the fridge. My bags were waiting in the garage, packed and ready. I lifted them into my truck, stepped outside, and closed the door behind me. By then, neighbors were gathering. Phones out, recording Angela and Greg's naked flight across the lawn. Sirens screamed in the distance, but I didn't run. I stood there, watching it burn, feeling something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. As the second floor collapsed into fire and smoke, I turned and walked away from everything that had once been my life. And for the first time in 2 decades, I felt utterly, terrifyingly free. 6 months later, I live in an apartment half the size of the house I burned, but twice as peaceful. No creaking floorboards that carried secrets, no beds soaked in betrayal, just silence, clean and honest. The insurance company chalked the fire up to faulty wiring in the bedroom. Old house, amateur renovation, one more tragedy in a long list of small-town accidents. They cut me a check for $300,000. I kept my half. Angela's half, I donated to a women's shelter. Irony was the only satisfaction I needed. Angela tried to return, of course. 3 months after the fire, she showed up at my door with tears in her eyes and excuses spilling from her mouth. It was a mistake. I was confused. "We can work through this." I didn't argue. I just sent her the full video, the 12 minutes I'd recorded where she called me a neutered dog, laughing about my pathetic devotion. I texted her only one line: "Show this to your parents. Show them why their daughter's life fell apart." She never contacted me again. Greg's downfall was even sweeter. His wife received an anonymous package: every video, every email, every credit card receipt. She didn't just divorce him, she gutted him in court and handed the evidence to his board of directors. Last I heard, he was selling insurance out of a strip mall in Ohio, the smooth charm gone, worthless now that the world knew exactly who he was. The men from my crew still buy me beers sometimes, slap my back, call me a legend. They don't know the whole truth, but they know enough that sometimes a man gets pushed too far, and sometimes the only way forward is to burn it all down and walk away. I don't date. Don't even try. I don't trust myself to tell the difference anymore between real affection and a well-practiced performance. I'm not bitter exactly. I'm just careful. I learned that love isn't enough when it only flows in one direction. That dignity matters more than comfort. That sometimes the best thing you can do is stop trying to fix what someone else is determined to break. The apartment is sparse but clean. No framed photos on the walls, no boxes of memories, just my tools, my boots, and a bed no one has ever defiled. Sometimes I still dream about Angela's laugh, the sweet one from the Safeway checkout when we first met. But when I wake up, I remind myself that girl never really existed. She was just better at pretending back then. The fire department ruled it an accident. But in this town, everybody knows. They look at me differently now. Not with pity, but with respect. The man who didn't just take it. The man who made them pay. I lay foundations for a living, and I know the truth now. Foundations only last if they're built on something solid. Build on lies, and sooner or later it all collapses. Build on truth, even brutal truth, and at least you know where you stand. Some will call what I did revenge. Others will call it justice. Me? I call it necessary. I kept my pride. And I made damn sure their laughter never echoed through my walls again. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and see you in the next videos.